So, my father was a bit of a jokester. In fact, there's a great deal in Howie that reminded me so much of him, which is probably why I fell in love with him. But he would always keep things light in meetings and in choir practice in particular. We had a very serious choir director. But anywhere tensions might develop, he found ways to cut them by half or more. One of the ways was in the way that he responded to the choir director's demand that they be alert. And my dad would say, what is that? What is alert? I'm not even sure how to be one, he would say. And so as things go, often as they do, it became a theme among the choir members that whenever the director commanded them to be alert, someone would ask for clarification. What's alert? What does alert look like? And what about aware or astute? Until one day someone skilled in craft making imagined what alert might look like and created a little figure out of a rock, I think, and like those Google Eye thingies, and some other things, with a little sign that said, "Hi, I'm alert." Anyway, I always think about that when I hear or I direct other people to be alert, and now you know the story, and if I start giggling, you'll know why. Joshua told the people to choose whom they would serve. And they said, as for us, my family and I, he said, as for us, we're serving God. And they said, of course, we'll serve God too. But Joshua knew that it's easy to say you'll do a thing or declare your belief in something, but live another reality. So he tried to make it abundantly clear, this God is supremely holy and is a jealous God. If you do end up serving other gods, it will not go well for you. And they said, yes, we will serve and obey this God. Now, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago, this word obey, there's no verb in the Hebrew Bible that translates obey. Because it's not about this blind acceptance to following rules, this allegiance to these life instructions of God. The word used here in Joshua 24 is Shema, which is listen, hear. Shema, listen, the Lord your God is one. You should love the Lord your God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength. It's translated as obey, but it means listen up. Soak it in. Pay attention. Not just blindly following rigid sets of rules. We must be present, alert to God's movement in this kingdom of God. Now in Matthew, Jesus talks a lot about the kingdom. The kingdom is like a mustard seed, a widow with 2 coins, a merchant with a costly pearl, etc. The kingdom is, even now, this kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven. But today's reading in Matthew, Jesus is recorded as saying, the kingdom of God will be like 10 bridesmaids who took their lamps, 5 foolish and 5 wise. Excuse me. Thank you. So Richard Rohr kind of speaks to this in a different way of what this might look like. And he's quoting the Reverend Wes Granberg Michelson, who was a former head of the Reformed Church in America, who reminds us that Jesus is the model of public virtue for all Christians. For us, when deciding how to act in the public sphere, we're first called to begin our personal experience of God, that is, being present to God. And this is kind of how the kingdom of God plays out in our lived experience. Everything begins in mysticism and ends in politics. Charles Piggy wrote, a French poet and writer who lived in solidarity with workers and peasants and became deeply influenced by his Catholic faith in the last years of his life. This quote intensifies the foundational starting point for how faith and politics should relate. Now, obviously, this is a huge thing in our world right now, and I just was thinking that this is an important way to reframe the way that we think about how we live in our world. Usually, however, we get it backward, and we've seen this a lot. Our temptation is to begin with politics, and then try to figure out how religion fits in. We start with the accepted parameters of political debate, and whether we find ourselves on the left or the right, and we use religion to justify, to bolster our existing commitments. But what if we make the inward journey our starting point? What if we recognize that our engagement in politics should be rooted in our participation in the Trinitarian flow of God's love? Then everything changes. We are no longer guided or constrained by what we think is politically possible, but are compelled by what we know is most real. At the heart of all creation, the mutual love within the Trinity overflows to embrace all life. We're invited to participate in the transforming power of this love. There we discover the ground of our being, centering all our life and all our action. And this was revealed most fully in Jesus as God's Son. His love for his enemies, his embrace of the marginalized, his condemnation of self-serving religious hypocrites, his compassion for the poor, his advocacy for the economically oppressed. Jesus didn't merely show the way. He lived completely in the presence and in the power of God's redeeming, transforming life. This didn't fit any conventional political alternative in Palestine at the time. Yet the politics of Jesus presented a clear agenda for radical social and economic transformation in his time, as in ours. All of this is rooted, however, in the incarnate participation Jesus made flesh in the love of the Trinity. His life embodied what God's love intends for the world and demonstrated the Spirit's power to transform, to heal, and to make whole what is broken. His mysticism preceded and then accompanied his politics. His relationship in participating in the love of God came first. So in Matthew, all the way back and then in chapter 5, Jesus tells the crowd, "You are the light of the world. Let your light shine." To keep the light shining, you need to refuel. If you don't have enough oil to keep it going, well, you won't keep shining. Shema, listen up, be alert. Let this seep into your very bones. Our God is one. The kingdom of God, a city on a hill, a beacon, a place of hope. When I'm not certain on the reality, I'm not centered on the reality of who I am. When I'm not trimming my lamp, replenishing the oil of the light that lives within me, the way I interact in this world with the people in my life, it's reactionary. It's thoughtless. It can be irritated or worse. I react to my world first and then try to fit my religion in with it, to paste on my piety. Macrame a face that appears to be in the right, following the right rules, and it is unrecognizable as distinctly who bears the image of God in a way that no one else quite does. And I miss what Jesus is doing before my very eyes. I miss the spark of the divine in you. And the opportunity to be a part of kingdom work, of building, of making things right. And remember from last week, we will become like God because we will see God as God is, face to face. But if I do not recognize God, I cannot be like God. And how will God recognize me if I'm not being the me God made me to be? If I'm not living into the truth of who I am? And one of the ways we can do the inner work, communing with this Trinity God, is by cultivating a disposition of gratitude. That's one of the simplest ways. By keeping awake, being alert to God with us, following where Jesus leads, not where Facebook posts tell us we should pay attention. Not first anyway. Some are encouraging, some are lovely too, but first, trim your lamp, refuel, and keep awake. Be alert. And let us look for things that make us grateful and thankful for God already at work in here. And here's a beautiful blessing of prayer that might help. And I posted it a week ago, I think, too, so some of you might have seen this, but it's so beautiful. This way that we can be Shema, listen into this gratitude. May I live this day compassionate of heart, clear in word, gracious in awareness, courageous in thought, generous in love. And as you find things that make you grateful and thankful, share them. Email, call, text, share them with one another even, but share them with us too. Send a smoke signal if you have to. And we'll feature them on the sign, as I mentioned before. As you walk by the building, as anybody walks by the building or drives by, they'll see this and can't help but be encouraged by our gratitude. Share your Thanksgiving tradition with me, with the church, and we can share it with one another right before Thanksgiving, or a recipe that you are grateful for that makes you happy when you are with family together. Share it with us. Be alert. And I'll tell you what alert looks like. Alert looks like you. You look like alert, and you are beautiful. And I am grateful. Thanks be to God.